Hi, welcome to Astrology for GAN Traders. My name is Olga Morales. Now I'm going to do a very quick summary of the two eclipses we are going to have this month. One being a solar partial eclipse on the 13th of July, which is at 20 degrees of Cancer. And you can see it's on the midheaven here, so we're in Melbourne and parts of Australia we will be able to see it, this partial eclipse, depending if there's no clouds, of course. And you can see that this eclipse, this solar eclipse, is actually opposite Pluto. Okay, so this is going to have quite a significant influence on world affairs, and we'll look at where that comes up on a solar map. And then we're going to have 2 weeks later, we'll have a lunar eclipse. This is going to be a total lunar eclipse on the 28th of July. Now this looks even more brutal. Look at this. We've got the lunar eclipse very close, tight to the nodes, that's why it's total. But also the moon will be conjunct Mars, which is retrograde at this time, and also we form a T-square with Uranus. Okay, so we've got this massive T-square here, which is a classic midpoint structure, which I'll show you on the dial. But at the same time, Mars is out of bounds and is retrograde, so this brings in high energy, high impact. It's quite a brutal energy, and at the same time not ignoring that Uranus and Neptune are still forming a 45 degrees angle. Okay, so let's have a look at what the first one, the solar eclipse, looks like on the solar map. So you just go to view and you go to solar maps, and you'll be able to superimpose the chart on the world map, which gives you location where we can anticipate these planetary alignments to have a stronger influence. And you can see how the actual eclipse, you can see the sun and moon together. MC means they're overhead, going right through the centre sort of part of Australia. Like Adelaide's going to, it'd be interesting what happens in Adelaide and Alice Springs, but also if we go higher, it goes over Tokyo and Japan. Okay, so if I put on the eclipse line, you'll see that since it's partial, you can see how it's below. Actually, I just want to put in the chart as well for that, so we got both of them. Yeah, so you can see the partial lines going through Melbourne. So hopefully it's a clear day and we'll be able to see that. Now the other thing we need to know, it's not just when they're on the MC. When we're looking at mundane charts, the angles of the charts are the most important for forecasting mundane events. So how do we know what that means? Well, what I've done is this is the MC. So that would be like in the 10th house. And then we go to the opposite end, which is the IC, which would be the 4th house. Now, anything in the 4th house, it rules the land. So that can be more indication of volcanoes and earthquake and tornadoes, like natural disasters in this area, which would be the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, when it's also rising on an angle, which is over Los Angeles and San Francisco, that's also significant. Okay, and also when it's on the rising and the descendant of an area, so you can see it going through Norway, Prague, it's all Eastern Europe, going through Athens and Greece into Cairo and all along pretty much the Nile there. Okay, so you can see that following. So they're the 4 angles that we need to look at. So that's going to be interesting to watch those zones. Now, anything to do with Mars, sorry, we'll do that for the next one, but Pluto can bring radical changes and transformation for those places. Okay, so let's have a look at the next one. We'll have a look at the total lunar eclipse. Because of these hard aspects, you obviously need to look at where they're on a world map, what countries and areas they're going to pick up. Now this is why I believe this one is a lot more brutal than the solar partial eclipse, because look at this. I mean, you can see that the sun and the node will be overhead in San Fran, Vancouver and Los Angeles, and Uranus will be on the descendant, right? But that also, the Moon and Mars, because Mars they're conjunct, is going to be going right on that meridian, on the lower meridian through this area, which increases the chances of earthquakes and volcanoes and natural disasters happening. Okay, over on the MC, we've got it going through Russia and Iran as well. So this area can be, and parts of Saudi Arabia. Okay, but there's issues, can be issues there, but that might be even more for the government because we're looking at the 10th house. Whereas when it's on the lower meridian, we're looking at the actual land under our feet. So there might be issues here in the government, okay, government areas in Russia. Some volatility, talk of war more. Now, the thing that also I should mention, Mars obviously brings more fires, which we've seen happening already in lots of areas in the United States and also in around the UK. And it's interesting that this eclipse, you can see that Mars and the Moon, the actual eclipse, are actually rising over London. So in effect, this eclipse is already having hold on those areas. Remember, the eclipses, it's not just the time, the day that it happens. It can be 3 weeks before, and it can even be 6 months before. So it tells you the areas to look at for what's coming, what areas, and also what you can expect. So this Mars, the other thing I mentioned too, I'll just keep going, and then you can see that pattern going through again. Tokyo in Japan is highlighted again for both of these. Okay, now if we have a look at where actually the declination, you can see that this is the solar eclipse in July, and on the 12th or the 13th of July, depending where you are. You can see that Mars is out of bounds here. Okay, and also the lunar eclipse, you can see that Mars is even further out of bounds. And a way to check that also is if you go onto the chart, you can actually look at, let me have a look, reports. You can look in, if you go into your tabulations, there's a declination grid, and you can see that Mars for the lunar eclipse on the 28th is actually minus 25. So it's in southern declination. Okay, so it's way beyond the 23.5 of the Sun, and it's causing, when it's out of bounds, it means it can do whatever it likes. It becomes a maverick, and Mars obviously is a planet of war and fire and violence, and so it's just let loose. It can do whatever it wants. Now, what I wanted to show you too is just to show you what it means when I was showing the this configuration over San Francisco and Los Angeles. I've just zoomed in. You can see that if I relocate the lunar eclipse to San Francisco, you can see what that means. So this is what I've been looking at for a while, and it is part of the ring of fire that's been activated again. And this energy, you can see, even if you're a beginner, we've got a strong opposition and a square. And if I put that on the dial, and I talk about planetary pictures, you can see, because they're all forming hard aspects, you can see how they come together all in the fixed area. And this fixed area, they always say when eclipses are in fixed signs, there's more probability of it lasting longer and also to affect the land. So we've got to be careful, keep your eye out for what's happening. I believe the markets will be really quite unsettled and volatile at these times because of these hard energies. And also, if any of these planets are highlighting something in your chart, you're going to feel a bit unsettled yourself, because it is really hard and difficult energy to sort of assimilate. So you'll probably feel a bit uneasy, hard to sleep. So just be aware that other people around you might be feeling the same way. And the fact that Mars is retrograde and also out of bounds that can bring more aggression and violence and agitated people around you, especially around this full moon. Remember, it's a full moon, or lunar eclipses are full moons, and usually people are more likely to be more aggressive at that time anyway, because they don't understand what they're experiencing. So be on the lookout, and we'll soon know in the next couple of weeks. But as you know, the lead up to eclipses, 3 weeks before and 3 weeks after, this energy is still in effect. Okay, so the moon wobble, every eclipse and the lunar eclipse, moon wobbles, and we know that there's more chances of natural disasters and violence to happen at that time anyway. So keep an eye out, and thank you for listening.